Morning, so it's just after 7 o'clock in the morning on the 14th of April 2025. Anyway, I spent quite a while waking up this morning, waking up and yet staying asleep, and in that in-between state what was going on was communicating, attempting to communicate to myself and to the world that when we wake up in our waking world that we're born into, things seem separate. In my pre-waking state, I was expressing and communicating how things are not really divided and broken, how everything is actually full, how in this waking life we can have the example of, is the glass half full or half empty? And the meaning that we put into that is like, what we mean is the glass half full of liquid, or is it half emptied of liquid? And really, it's nonsense, because the half that's not full of liquid is full of air, for example. And everything is actually full, and yet we perceive a lack. And when we're born in the first place, there isn't so much of a mind, an artificial mind. But as we develop and as we learn of the people around us and as we learn from this world, we begin to develop ideas, artificial ideas, that something is wrong and something is lacking, and that there is what the Christians would call sin, that something has happened which needs to be fixed. Someone needs to be blamed, there needs to be judgment. Lessons need to be learned, lessons to make less of. So, from when I'm in the pre-sleep, or when I'm in the pre-waking state, and my consciousness, my mind, my imagination, my identity, my is attempting to capture the state of oneness that I was feeling and experiencing, to want to communicate that to people in the world, whether that's Tara beside me or myself when I've awoken, to remember, or to the world of other people who maybe through the Facebook and the YouTube and that kind of thing. Of course, it's really difficult to capture these kinds of things in a logical state and to state these things logically. These things on states of magic mushrooms or whatever sorts of psychedelics that affect the psyche, it is a sort of a laugh on the magic mushrooms to come up on those mushrooms and to experience what it's like to be in the dream time where things are not actually separated around a sense of identity, kind of thing. And one can often be in these ecstatic states in fits of laughter, knowing that it's going to be impossible to explain this to someone else, or even to remember its state when you come down out of the high spin ecstasy and return to what it's like to be in a separate body, in a separate world, in a mind of separation. So that dream state is equivalent to that psychedelic state, and both of those states are in the state in the psyche. The psyche is where the mind meets the soul. So in explaining any or all of that, it's to do with the veil of time being the veil of separation. And again, the concept being that somehow the newborn baby's soul, the soul comes down through time into space. And when the human dies, the body dies, the soul is released from within the dimension of time and returns to the dimension beyond time. So the interesting thing there is the communication of the individualized body, identity, person, man or woman, child. In sleep, do we travel beyond time? And when we awaken, do we return into time? Kind of thing. And in meditation, is it an attempt to be centered in the self and then release the self to allow the greater self from outside of time to make contact with the lesser self who thinks it's learning lessons here in time, kind of thing. Right. A lot of experience these days of just recognizing and realizing the kind of Stockholm syndrome of being in a body and of feeling guilty for this world and of feeling like this world needs to be saved and feeling so serious about one's behavior and the things one has to do to be a good person in order to earn the money, to pay the bills, to feed the kids, to pay one's way, to be successful, to stand head and shoulders up with other people standing head and shoulders up so that one doesn't fall by the wayside and fail in this society. And all the judgment of this society that things are unwell and that bad people rule the roost and all of these things, and that what's on the screens is a falsehood and therefore the truth is not whole and the whole truth isn't known and therefore untruths are being believed as if they're truths, and all of this deception, deceiving, conception, conceiving. So yeah, in this moment thinking, oh wow, what is this going to come across? How will this sound to someone else who's listening to it? Is this interesting enough to continue with? Is this just an absolute failure to convey the state of feeling that was in the dream and the intent to communicate that state of feeling? Having awoken, made coffee, fed the cats. Kind of thing. Yeah, so to convey again, it would seem to me in my humanized mind separation that my thoughts are different to other people's thoughts, that a lot of what I'm thinking is stuff that a lot of other people may not have thought before, which isn't to say that nobody has thought these things before, but is to say things like these thoughts have an existence of their own, and I may attain towards these thoughts, and a bit like feeling a statue in the darkness, not being able to see what it is that I'm feeling, I may be able to discern the shape of what the statue is without really being able to see it. But once I've felt what the statue is, and once I've got an idea of what that statue is, it doesn't make the statue mine. And the same with these thoughts. These thoughts exist. One can feel them out and feel them deeper and feel into them. That doesn't make them my thoughts or someone else's thoughts because they said it first. So there's an idea that the thoughts are processing through us and the thoughts pre-exist in the same way as software can pre-exist a computer. But if you run that software through the computer, then the computer is able to understand things that without that software it just wouldn't understand. So with us humans, it's as if we're processing ideas, like all those ideas that are in the Bible, or all those ideas that are in the Enlightenment, or all those ideas about mathematics or language. So maybe language is the best way to describe this stuff. We humans learn language, this spoken word, written word stuff, and we don't have to be taught every single word. And even though it's confusing that the word taught has many meanings and the word thought has quite a lot of meanings. And the words sound similar but are separate words. But nonetheless, eventually, every child, once they've come across the word taught and the word thought, and that there are many meanings for the word thought, as in a rope can be quite taut, which is to be stretched tightly, kind of thing. Or one can be taught the teachings, or one can have thoughts, or one can be well thought of. For example. But the thing is that we each individually learn these different examples, and we figure these things out. And we learn these languages, and we continue learning throughout our whole lives, because there are more words than we can possibly learn, and the combinations of all these words are more than we can possibly learn in a lifetime. And so that makes it quite clear that the language itself and all of its details pre-exist us individual humans, and the language itself teaches itself to us individual humans. So the language itself is alive. It's a living language. It's a living intelligence. It is more intelligent than the humans who are speaking the language. And in that sense, the language is like the software, and we humans are like the computers of the software. And without the language, we humans would not be able to do the things which we have been doing, kind of thing. So we could not have created computers eventually, as in the metallic, plastic, silicone things that we think we have created. But essentially, the language has taught us how to create. Mathematics, Hebrew, English, French, Latin, Greek, Aborigine, Native American, Eskimo, all these various different languages. We do not know how these languages came into being. I can reason and figure out that the sounds come from feelings which begin to be expressed as mom. So we can witness any child learning how to speak and go, this could be how it was 100,000 years ago with the first Neanderthals or Cro-Magnons or Homo sapiens who began to mutter and murmur, kind of thing. So the language is acting through us. We are like the tools which language is using, thoughts are using, in order to create some bigger picture thing which we individually don't know. And the analogy for that is individual cells receive information from some higher order of being, and those individual cells gain purpose and act upon that purpose to fulfill a role within that purpose. So individual cells become fingers, individual cells become eyes, become noses, become each of the organs, become the skin, blood vessels. So essentially all of those cells are the same until they receive their purpose, and that purpose forms them into their activities and therefore their shapes. And we individual humans are somewhat like individual cells. And we are receiving a purpose somehow from some higher mind. And that higher mind is actually a mystery to us individuals. And we all have our individual concepts of what that higher mind may be saying. And then there are religious concepts of a higher mind and a lower mind. The ideas of duality of a heavenly world and a fallen world, and a future world in which the fallen world becomes an inferno of a hell world where people can be trapped for all of eternity, being boiled in oil and burned at the stake and all of those kind of things. But all of it adds up to that these days all thoughts are a virtual world here in the physical manifest reality. In Buddhism, that would be that all life is suffering. It would also be that all life is temporary, type of thing, temporary, to do with time. And again, this concept of time, that one enters inside of the bubble of time, but there is something outside of time, like a mind, like an intelligence, like a feeling, like an awareness, like consciousness. All words which we struggle to use, and we struggle to know what it is we're constructing when we put these words together. I'm going to leave it there. Yeah, leave it there. Good morning.